Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, Mastering Your Money in Difficult Times. And uh, my name is Nikita, and I'm your host for today. And this webinar is being recorded, and also you are all on mute throughout this session. So, in case you want to ask any questions, you can use the question box in the webinar control panel. Also, we have handouts for this session, which is basically a PDF summary of the slides, summary of the slides, which is in PDF mode. So you can download it at any point of time. So right now, let me just hand you over to our presenter for today, Mr. Don Fulton. Don, over to you.
Thank you. My name is Don Fulton. I am an accredited financial counselor, a certified retirement counselor, and a financial fitness coach. As was mentioned, our focus today is mastering your money in difficult times. And whenever we start out, we always want to highlight the objectives for our time together. And so as we look here at these objectives, I want to encourage you to think about what goals you may have around this topic and to write those down. Those can always be a good focus for our time together. And if there's things that you're hoping to look at specifically, by writing your goals down now, and as you may think of some during the presentation, that'll give you a starting point beyond our time together so that you can continue to follow up on the things that are presented and try new things perhaps. But again, it's all about that mastering and feeling like you have more control over your finances. That's a key piece here. And part of that is we want to be able to deal with the anxiety that we may have around finances. We want to understand why managing the money is more of a mind over the math. Sometimes we think of finances and math comes to mind right away, and it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. But there's a little bit more to it than that, so we want to be sure we address that. Define spending needs, spending wants. There's a difference, and to be able to identify those for yourself can be another piece of gaining more control over your finances. Identify practical opportunities for saving, also for budgeting. We can always use more tools in the toolbox, so look for those. And then thinking about a strategy. Now, this could be different for each one of us. What might work for me may not necessarily work for you. But think about when you, again, going back to that idea of the goals you have around your finances, what might be some short-term goals you have, what might be the more long-term, and thinking about those, what steps, what would be part of that strategy that you would want to use to achieve those goals that are meaningful to you. Okay, now this is not always something that we do in a vacuum. Of course, we get exposed to a lot in the world. And so here are some examples. As you look at these images, how do these images make you feel? So let's just take a moment and scan over those and see what kind of feelings they might elicit. If you're comfortable, you could maybe jot down the feelings in the question section if you're comfortable doing that. So give you another moment here to look at those. So looking at these images, we encounter, sometimes we may feel like we're bombarded, even overwhelmed by the messages that we see, whether it's, social media, the news, what have you. And there's this sense of sensationalism, wanting to get our attention, but yet too much of that, we can become, shall we say, overstimulated, and that can have an impact on how we function. And so we hear about the crises, we hear about protests, we hear about war, and a lot of those big picture things. And it's important to be aware of that. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. Our awareness, though, is that first piece that we want to think about. And as we see these things, to say, okay, whatever feelings this might stir in me, what is that? What's that impact doing to me? And so to have that awareness, that's an important piece. And as you become aware of that, to find ways that you're able to filter and set some of that stuff aside so that you can still function and do the things that you need to do, the things that you have control over. A lot of what we're seeing, like in these images, are things that we're not going to have control over. And again, it's important to be aware of. But what are the things that I do have control over and can, feel like I'm making some progress or I'm moving towards and not feeling stuck? Anxiety.
Don,
Yes.
sorry. Yeah, I think Rebecca has raised her hand, so just wanted
Oh,
to
I'm
know,
sorry.
do you want to say something?
Oh, okay. Let me get back to that piece. Oh, uncertainty. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And with that sense of uncertainty, that makes it hard at times to function, because it's like, in what I do, is this going to make a difference or not? Um, so that, again, that's one of those pieces, to have that awareness and say, okay, I'm feeling that. What might be a small step that I can take to work through that, so that I, can deal with my financial decision making and so forth. And as we go further through the presentation, see if there's things that you might want to try that help to work through that uncertainty that may be there. Now, on this slide, the it's saying anxiety and overwhelm, that's normal. And I think part of hearing that and seeing that on the screen, to me, says, okay, this is normal. I'm not the only one. Okay, because sometimes we may feel, like, oh, I'm the only one thinking this, and that makes it harder to function, to ask for help, whatever it may be that we need. So acknowledging that. Also, um, some studies are saying 1 in 3 feel worried. Nearly half state they don't feel confident in managing their money. And if that confidence isn't there, that again is going to make it hard to move forward. Young adults, are talking about the impact and the cost of living. Again, part of that, those images and the news and so forth that we hear about, is the impact in recent years the cost of living has had on our the ability to use our pay and the things that we would normally want to purchase. Well, maybe we've had to look at doing things different or scaling back. And again, that can add to that uncertainty at times as well. So one, again, to acknowledge that it's a normal type of response to have. mentioning the cost of living crisis that we've gone through, the goods and services rising faster than our income, and that gets measured by inflation. And just to say a little bit about inflation, think of that as a basket of goods that a person would purchase. And in that basket, there's a loaf of bread, and maybe there's eggs and milk, and whatever would be kind of the normal things a person would purchase. And what they do is they look at those and they say, okay, what's the price at this point? And then, a month later or whatever, time frame they might want to use, they'll look at that same basket of items and say, okay, now what do these cost? And that is how they come up with the inflation. You could always do a deeper dive on that to see what's included and what isn't included, because that could have an impact as well. Sometimes things that aren't in the basket may be increasing, rising faster than we're able to respond. So that's real. Yet we want to find ways to respond that we feel like, okay, I have some control of some of this, even though, the big picture, again, that's the part that's challenging. This has an impact for us. Asking about, how those images made you feel. I also want to say that finances are an emotional thing. So we want to acknowledge that as well. And it can affect our mental health and how we function. And so those kind of triggers in combination, again, can make it harder to function. There can be the demand on our time or mental energy. Perhaps we feel tired more often. Maybe it's harder to wake up in the morning. Those kind of things, having headaches, those could be related to this. So those may be the kind of clues you want to tune into and say, okay, what's going on? Creditor action. Creditor action. If a person is getting behind on their bills, have they reached out to the creditor and being proactive and saying, hey, what are my options here? I'm going through a rough time right now. Can you work with me? And I want to say it's always helpful to be proactive and reach out to creditors, because they're usually going to be more willing to work with you. If they're trying to connect with you, that can make it more challenging. And I know that that's often an uncomfortable connection to make for people. But again, if you can be proactive, it's usually the better course to take. Social, financial exclusion from activities and support networks. This goes back to that sense of, okay, I'm the only one, and so we can pull back, and we don't engage in those activities that normally, give us meaning and feed us and so forth. And also, we may isolate ourselves more from the friends, family, those people that we do need to have the connections. That's also important for our well-being, and giving attention to that as well. Going without essentials. Okay, are people making difficult choices about what they're spending money on? Thinking to that basket of goods. Well, maybe I do without some item that's in that basket, for a while, because the paycheck isn't going as far as it had before. So those choices, it's something we have control over, yet at the same time, it has an impact. So we want to acknowledge that. Relationship difficulties. Are you finding that with family and friends, maybe rather than responding, you're reacting more? Your temper seems to be closer to the surface, and it's just harder to engage. That can be another factor here to give attention to. I often, when I work with clients that are couples or financial partners, I say, you know, when you're talking about the finances, you want to try to be encouraging and listen, be respectful of each other, and look at it as, okay, how can we say as a household do things different that's going to help us reach the goals we may have. And so it's about that focus, becoming more familiar with talking about finances. That can also help reduce the tension. And it's not about being budget police. That's a term I often use. You know, you're not looking for something to nitpick or criticize. You're looking for ways to be healthier in a relationship. So you don't want to ignore that either. The last column there, you'll see, again, impact on mental health. So many ways that this can happen. Guilt and shame, we don't talk about those, but we experience them. And we want to acknowledge that because we don't want those to be things that, you know, paralyze us. And again, we isolate or whatever, thinking we're the only one. So to acknowledge that and say, you know, I'm struggling. Part of our presentation today is to also be aware of the employee assistance program that you have available to you. That's another resource so that if you need to reach out and ask for some kind of help, that's there for you as a benefit. I encourage you to look at that and what's available. The other mental health impact that are listed there, we mentioned anxiety, low self-esteem, maybe we get angry more easily, frustration, fear. I'm going to just let you look at some of those, and there can be physical impact, like the panic attacks for some people. Um, Another resource at times, people may actually want to see their physician and set up an appointment and make sure things are okay physically as well. Suicidal ideation, that can also increase. And especially in cases where people may turn to gambling, looking for the one quick fix to their financial situation. There's studies that indicate a strong connection there that if the gambling becomes problematic, the suicidal ideation that can increase significantly as well. So if there's thoughts of hurting oneself, or if you're concerned about somebody else, that's a time to try to connect and you know, ask how people are doing. Again, try to connect them with resources that are going to be helpful to them. What's the difference? Anxiety, worry. How do we make a distinction? I think sometimes when we talk about anxiety, worry, tension, stress, we tend to lump it all together, and it's like, okay, you know, oh, I'm struggling. And to be able to sort it out may be helpful to some. So the anxiety, of course, is going to be that piece of you're aware of a situation, and the thing about worry is, you know, is something becoming all consuming. So our financial stress, if that becomes a kind of an acute situation, the brain's going to release too much what's called cortisol, and for prolonged periods of time, that's not going to be a healthy thing. It's going to make it more difficult to make decisions, more difficult to relax. And so, again, you want to keep in mind what's going on with you physically. And if you feel stuck, that's a time to reach out and ask for help. So that constant case of debilitating, the worst cases, that's something you don't want to ignore. So I encourage you again, reach out, connect with the resources that are available to you. Restricting spending after restricted living. Of course, these last few years we've been challenged in many ways due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. And so we have had to change our lives in numerous ways. And a lot of that has isolated us more. And we've had to do with less options that before it's like we maybe took for granted, things we could do, places we could go, and so forth. And so going through that of course is challenging. And now as we look at the spending factor, okay, we're going through those type of things in another way. Frustration, it's saddening, it feels unfair. So that cost of living is also creating this additional challenge. And how are we going to respond in a way that's going to be healthy for us and meaningful? So we want to remember what are some of the things that, prior to this that we found that were helpful. Perhaps going for a walk. Well, that's still something a person can do. And, whether it's, around the block or hiking, those kind of things, the physical activity, that can be good. What are the things that give you life? That may not necessarily mean spending a lot. Listening to music, if you enjoy that, reading a favorite book or author, those kind of things, making use of a library, being able to check out a book, those are all things that you can do. And make a list. Make a list of the things that you've done in the past that help you, and then think about, how can I incorporate those into my life today? And, what can I add to the list? And to have more than one option, that way, if, I mentioned going for a walk, well, what if the weather isn't favorable to do that? Well, then what's plan B? Those are the kind of things that you want to come up with. Also, being mindful of our language. When it comes to finances, talk about budgeting. Budgeting tends to have that, kind of heaviness around it. We want to, step away. We want to react. We don't want to engage in that. Oh, that's work. And yeah, there is some work to it. But think about the impact of hearing that word. What if you look for new language, new terms that help you to feel more in control? So one example is spending plan. Think of a spending plan. This could even be tied back to whatever goals you may have for yourself that you wrote down. What about my spending plan will help me achieve those goals, those things that are meaningful to me? Because that, we talk often about the why. Why do we do things, which is another way of saying, well, how is that meaningful to you? Those are your motivations. Those are the reason to give attention to a spending plan. And one of the tools I encourage is tracking your spending. Keep track for a period of time to get a snapshot of, well, where's the money going? And as I look at that, are there things I might do differently that help me to feel I have more control, even though some of those things outside of my control continue to change? So this managing of your money is about empowerment. It's about finding choices and making decisions and having options, because then we aren't going to feel as trapped, and then that's a healthy thing. So to have choices, so it's good work to engage in and feel empowered by. 20% of the money game is mechanics, while 80% is psychology. Tony Robbins. You probably have heard of Tony Robbins, does a lot in the area of self-help and so forth. But here's a comment about the money piece and how we approach our finances. That's going to be different for each of us. And we want to think about and look at what kind of mindset we approach our finances with. Is it a mindset of feeling, yeah, I have options, I have control, or is it feeling that things are scarce, maybe fear? That, being aware of those is the first step to making changes so that they don't keep you stuck in one place. The money scripts is one of the ways to think about mindset. How do you feel about money? Is it that cause of the stress and anxiety? Identify what your money script is. So as the definition there says, this is unconscious, transgenerational belief about money that was developed in childhood, which drives money behaviors in adulthood. Think about your earliest memory of money in the household that you grew up in. What was that? What was it like? That has an impact. And so this is saying that has had a part in creating how you approach finances. And especially if you feel stressed, you tend to go to what's familiar, like a default to that kind of approach to money, for example. So we want to look, there's some ways to think about the money scripts that may be helpful to identify. Now, we could experience these at different times in different ways, but again, to have a sense of, well, what's going on here, here are some to think about. So money avoidance, belief that you don't deserve it, you don't deserve money, or a fear of dangers of having it. That for some people might be, that mindset, that money script. Money worship, an increase in income or windfall will solve all the problems. So it's putting it up on that pedestal that only if I had more. The question I sometimes raise is, well, how much is enough? Which is also a good question to ask. So there's that money worship, money status, the hunger after status derived from the things money can buy. There's a phrase I think of, keeping up with the Joneses, having the latest, having the greatest, the best, all those kind of things. And again, how much is enough? But our self-worth becomes tied to money or the things that money can buy. So that is another money script. Money vigilance. This is giving attention to finances. Now, of any of these, this might be the one to want to work towards and have. But consider that anything to an extreme could be problematic. So if you're the vigilance, if it's like I'm counting every penny, okay, that might be a bit much. However, if you're tracking your spending, if you're looking at ways to do things different, You're keeping those goals you have in mind, and how taking these steps are going to help you achieve those goals. That's money vigilance. So that's it in a healthy framework. So I encourage you, are there times you've experienced these? And again, think back to what some of those earliest memories were about finances growing up, and how do they maybe fit in these or not? Um, was your household one where there was a sense of abundance and safety and security, or was it more of a scarcity and fear and never feeling like there was enough? So those have an impact on us. Awareness of those is the first step, though, to being able to say, how do I do things different now? I mentioned tracking your spending. This is a tool that I highly recommend. Um, Carry a notepad, use your cell phone, whatever works for you. But as you purchase things, jot down, what was it I purchased? How much did I spend? And so forth. And you can use that as a starting point or a baseline for creating a budget to say, okay, where's the money going? And, again, how could I maybe do things different? But by tracking, you're going to have numbers that I like to say, numbers you trust. They're your numbers. They're not guessing, but they're going to help you to make concrete decisions about your spending plan, your ability to achieve the goals you have. Um, track. Um, so then, as you look at your monthly situation, and it's like, okay, this is where the money is going, you also want to keep in mind then, what do I have to work with? As you think about the household income, um, often people will think about the gross amount. The problem with that is that sometimes people may think they have more to work with than they do because they haven't factored for the taxes yet. So I say, look at the take home, look at that net amount. That is what you have to work with. So use that figure, and then from your tracking, the identifying, okay, what's the expense total? Then you look to see, okay, is there something left over or not? Can I pay down some debt, or can I save more money? But that's going to help you to make decisions based on those numbers, and that's going to be more realistic for you. So, this involves critical thinking, involves the work of tracking. That tracking, though, I've had some people say to me, I did that, and they were in a store and saw something on sale, and they were going to buy that item, and then they said, oh, I'm tracking, okay. And they realized that the item was more of a want than a need, so they decided not to. So the tracking actually functioned in a way for them to short circuit that unconscious thing that was going on. It's like, oh, I see a sale sign. Okay, I'm gonna, take advantage of that. Well, still spending money, but using the tracking of your spending as a tool. So it's not only that you're tracking the numbers, but then how does it change your behavior? Or when you look at them, what do you say about doing things in a different way that may free up money to either pay down debt or to do some savings? What's the difference between spending wants and needs? When I see this question, I think like 10, 15 years ago, doing an exercise where there was a comparison. Is this a need or is this a want? That sort of thing. And at one time, a cell phone might have been, the thing to look at and say, is this a need or want? And people would say, oh, that's a want. Today, it's more likely to be a need. So things can change over time, and they can have a different sense of value to each person too. Some people may say, technology, I avoid it. I don't need it. I can live without it. Others, okay, this has been very central to a lot of my activities and what I do throughout the day. It's a useful tool, as long as it doesn't, become something that we get all obsessed and stuck on, or something like that. We want to have some sense of balance. So again, think about wants and needs. And as you look at your tracking of your spending and what you've identified as to where the money is going, how would you categorize those? Which would you say? Needs are going to be those basic living expenses. Wants are sort of the everything else. And figuring out what that means for you in your household, that is going to be helpful. Again, it's going to help you to start taking control. You're going to start feeling more confident about decision making moving forward. It does take self-discipline. Note here, conventional personal financial wisdom advocates splitting your income like this example. Now, this is one model. There are other models out there. So don't feel like, oh, I tried this, it didn't work. Oh, I'm gonna, why bother? No, this is one approach. And I say with any approach, try it for a period of time. If it works, great, keep at it. If it doesn't, well, look at other options. So as you look at these needs, wants, savings, and the percentages, again, think about the net income that you have to work with, that take home, and then look at how things would fall with what you have to work with. Okay. We don't do a good job when it comes to savings. There's statistics that have said that like 42% of households in the United States fall into what's called a category of liquid asset poverty. Liquid asset poverty means that you don't have at least 3 months income equivalent to fall back on if something unexpected occurs. So, that's concerning that we don't have a buffer of some kind. So as you start to identify what you have to work with, looking at reducing debt, looking at ways to save, I encourage that. And again, here are some things to compare, need or want, getting a taxi, gym membership, so forth. So there are ways to help you make those decisions, those choices for you. Manage your money. Conduct an audit of your spending. The tracking that I talk about, that is a key piece of that. Also, when you get statements, be sure that you're looking at the statements that come with your credit cards and your bank statements and so forth, to make sure everything looks in order, and read those newsletters and information pieces that come with those, because they may have tips that you could incorporate into your strategy. Set yourself a 1% savings challenge. If you were to receive a raise, if your spending plan has been working for you and you've been able to live without that increase, well, consider that increase as something going into savings now. That would be one example. Or sometimes if people have a tax return, they say, well, I'm going to put that into savings to start jumpstart. But the more you can make it something on a regular, consistent basis, that's going to be a better sustainable approach for the long term. Borrow, don't buy. Um, I'm a person that tends to read books. I buy a lot of books. You may even see them behind me. But I do have a library card. I can still read books and I can save money, borrow the book from the library, read that. Those are examples of things that we could do different. And so create a list of free fun things. Sometimes museums or zoos have a free day or a discount day. Hey, check it out. Be mindful, oops, sorry, jumping ahead there, sorry. Be mindful of unnecessary habit spending, particularly with cash. So that tracking will help you identify areas that you might want to, do different. I think of a client years ago, a student in college who said, I need to start an emergency savings account, and tracked her numbers and shared her numbers with me, and very tight, spending plan. But there was one item that said miscellaneous. And I said, can you tell me what that includes? And basically it was the once a day stop at a coffee shop. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's helpful to know. And I didn't say anything more about it. Then she said, you know what? That's going to become the once a week treat. That was the one place in her spending plan that she saw she could do things differently. So that was huge. And I commend her for, identifying that. And that would be a big swing then to start, savings and having that emergency backup. Canceling any unnecessary subscriptions, things you're not, using. One man's trash. I think of my spouse and daughter would go to the consignment stores and look for treasures. Well, you can get things at a fraction of what they might cost new, and also somebody on the other end is benefiting from that. So, that's a way to think about doing things different as well. Small changes make a big difference. You'll see some statistics there in the right-hand column, but let me elaborate a bit on these bullet points that you see here. Outsmart the supermarkets. Have you ever noticed when you go into a supermarket that the bakery may be the first thing you encounter, or some kind of special display? Well, those are their way of getting your attention. And thinking back to money scripts, something's going on unconsciously that, it's like, oh, the aroma of that bread that smells so good, I should pick some up while I'm here. But if I come in and I think, oh, that bread smells good today, but yet was that on my list? Oh, well, maybe another time. So being aware of what techniques are being used to draw you in to make those purchases. So pay attention. You're in control. You're steering here. So you have choices, you have options, but keep in mind, what's your strategy? What's the goal in the end? Break the brand illusion. There may be a generic type brand that is equally good. Those are examples. Never shop hungry. Never shop hungry. There's an acronym, HALT, H-A-L-T, and that gets used in a couple of different ways. One of the ways is it can stand for hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or hurt, angry, lonely, tired. When you're experiencing hunger or you're experiencing some kind of hurt, let's say, that's a time to take a step back and pause, take a breath, and say, okay, what's going on? Is if I just proceeded, am I going to make a choice that later I'd say, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish I hadn't purchased that, or whatever. But to pause and again, to halt, that's a technique to help you to say, okay, how can I make a wise choice? Or do I need to, step away for now? Time your trip to get the yellow tickets. Again, if there is a sale, is it something that you would make use of? So that might, then make sense. Break habits. Do you have a pattern of, are there certain stores or certain sections of stores that you tend to go to more, maybe to do things a little different? That could help. Abandon your basket, rather than having the shopping cart, maybe you just grab well, they say basket here, but like a hand carry basket. You don't fill it up as full as maybe a whole cart would. Go incognito. This is something to think about in regards to shopping online. With the technology, our habits get tracked. And so when we go to, say, a website and we visit it on a regular basis, it may get identified as, oh, this person is interested in this item. So a couple things could happen. One, perhaps doing that, the price goes down to make it more attractive. I've also seen where prices have gone up and it's like, oh, more of a panic sets in and it's, okay, I should get that. But if you can go to different sites and do your shop and compare, that way, just go when you're really sure that's the item I want. You're not being monitored in the same way. Consider local markets, support the local economy, and often things may be less expensive locally than in other, bigger stores. Take cash if possible. This goes back to the raising your awareness and thinking about unconscious. Cash is very tactile, I think is the word I want to use, that, it's this physical thing. And so to spend it, we are more aware. Studies have indicated that when we use plastic, we tend to spend 10% more than we would otherwise. And even now, when we can use our cell phones to make purchases, that increases it more. And what's happening is the habit of unconscious convenience is being taken advantage of or exploited, so that we tend to buy more. But if you can then be aware of that and say, how do I do things different? To make it more tangible, that might be another tool that helps you to monitor, how much you're spending as well. So, and again, there's some examples there in the right-hand column. Manage your energy. We are very aware of how utilities, the use of energy has increased and how that has an impact on our spending plan. So looking for devices that you can unplug, that you're not making use of, that is one example. Heat the human. Okay, I happen to live in Minnesota, so we're getting ready for the late fall, early winter. Okay, I put another layer on, so that's heating the human. And in the summer, it'd be kind of the opposite of, well, okay, take a layer off. Rather than going and turning the heat up or turning the air conditioner on right away, that's an option. turn the lights off. What kind of light bulbs are you using? We've gone from incandescent to the CFL, those fluorescent curly bulbs, and now we have LED, light emitting diode type lights that are, so in the efficiency has increased though with those changes. So that's another way to be more economical. Wash economically. Use cold water when you wash your clothes. That's an example. Laptop's going to use less energy than a desktop. Keep the fridge cool. Make sure that the fridge, freezers, that the seal is good so that they're not leaking and wasting energy. Boil water that you need, just using what you need. Insulate your property. Sometimes putting more insulation in an attic space. There are some utility companies that may offer like energy audits. Now, there may be an upfront cost where they come in and they kind of look for the leaks and all that stuff, and then they'll make recommendations about what you could do differently. So that would be another area to consider. Do a spend freeze. Maybe there's a zero spend day where you just say, okay, every Tuesday I don't spend money on anything. Okay, and also see what impact does that have? What might I spend money on that I can now use to address the debt or save? Let the decisions marinate. Shop and compare. If it's a big ticket item, a vehicle, a home, be sure that you're shopping and comparing and that you feel, okay, I've done my homework and I'm ready. When you're about to make a purchase, think, here are these questions. Do I need it? Can I afford it? Will I use it? Is it worth it? Have I checked if it's cheaper anywhere else? So if the answer to any of these is no, don't buy. So those might be a nice list of questions to have with your shopping list to say, okay, I'm going to ask these questions about the purchase I'm considering. It's another tool that I have that I can use to help make the decision for myself. And then, of course, tackling debt, we want to face the facts. We want to be realistic. Create a payment plan, aim for more than the minimum payment and start with one with the highest interest. Let's say you have a few credit cards and you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I want to tackle this? One approach, as mentioned here, is any extra money you have, put it on the account with the highest interest rate. And then you work from that one to this one with the lesser interest rates. Another approach is where you have any extra money, apply it to the account with the smallest balance. And then once that's paid off, what that frees up, add to the payment of the next highest balance. I like that whittling away like that because psychologically I feel I'm making progress. Either one, try it, see what works for you, okay? But again, these are ways you can approach it. Balance transfer. This is an option you want to be cautious about. It's not a long-term solution. It can be a short-term. So if you have this opportunity to transfer a balance and it's 0% interest for, say, 6 months, and you can pay it off within 6 months, well, that's worth considering. If that's just going to delay paying something off and you're going to try to do another balance transfer later, those things get monitored and there's a point where the offers don't come anymore. And then, you still have your debt. So again, I'd be cautious about that one. But if it's part of the short term resolves the issue, maybe you want to do that. Get advice. You can contact the Employee Assistance Program to find out about financial resources. Um, Talking with a representative at a credit union, that can be helpful. So talk to creditors. This goes back to what I said about being proactive and reaching out to them so they're not reaching out to you. That's always a helpful approach. Moving forward, okay, this reminds me of the example I gave about the woman in college who was identified that she could do different with her coffee spending. You can do the same thing with lunches. And consider setting SMART goals. SMART goals are those ones that are specific, measurable, realistic. Let's see, make sure I'm doing these right. SMART. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time framed. So those are SMART goals. And you can apply that to things besides finances. But some people like to have a structure to use, and SMART goals would be a way to do that. Well, with that, I want to again encourage you have an employee assistance program, that benefit available to you. And there's a variety of services that, check out the website, see what's there. There may be helpful articles, services, maybe discounts on some things. Until you look, you don't know what's there and, how you might be able to add these to your toolkit of options. So again, I want to encourage you and I thank you for your time and listening. And I'm going to turn it back to Nikita so that she can mention there's a survey.
Thank you for that, Don. Rebecca, I could see your hand is raised. Was there any question? No. Okay. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And now we would like to tell you about this survey, which is basically an anonymous feedback just to know what went well and what needs improvement so that we can improve ourselves. So all you have to do is log into this link, which is surveymonkey.com/r/training session 22, or scan the QR code through your phone and enter the slot ID, which is 150640, and you would be able to fill in the survey. I would request you to take 2 minutes of time and please fill in the survey. This survey is obviously anonymous, so you don't have to worry about it. So if there's no question, we can end this webinar. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.